Steve and Brooke and the entire family. I want to thank you all for your presence this morning as we come to celebrate Cheryl Chicki's life. I'm sure all of us would rather be doing something else this morning, and yet this task has been set in front of us. But we come today in the sure and certain hope that Cheryl's life, even though it has come to an end on this side of life, continues on in the presence of her Lord. We come today to pay our respects to this family and to share the burden of grief with them as we call on the name of God and ask God's Spirit to lead us and guide us, and yes, to minister to us and to give us peace. Would you please bow with me as we pray? Most gracious God, we bring ourselves this day to celebrate the life of one that has meant so much to so many. Cheryl and Steve have become so much a part of our community and our church. And Lord, we know they are a part of your family. We come today to not only say farewell for now to Cheryl, but to come alongside this family, to stand with them hand in hand and arm in arm. We pray, O Lord, that as we share words and reflections this day, whether it bring a smile to our face or a tear to our eye, that we can remember Cheryl. But also, Lord, we come today to worship you. We pray that what we say and what we do will honor and glorify you. We lift up all of those who will be speaking and singing and playing this day. We ask for calm. We ask for your presence to be a part of them. And most of all, Lord, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who told those that were gathered at the graveside of his friend Lazarus that he truly is resurrection and life. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Psalm 23, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restored my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
You'll see a time designated in your order of worship this day for family and friends to share some thoughts. At this time, Cheryl's sister Melinda will come and share with you.
For those of you that I've not met before, which I think is pretty much everybody, I'm Belinda. I'm Cheryl's little sister. And I just want to tell you a story today about the best, coolest big sister a girl could ever have. I call her Gogi. That was her nickname, and that's what the family called her. So Cheryl's a little unusual for me, but we'll go with it for today. When we grew up, we shared a room together for years. She and I sleeping on one little double bed, listening to the radio at night, playing music, hoping that mom and dad really weren't going to listen and hear us. We could go and tell stories, and it was pretty cool growing up with her as a big sister. She was so cool. When I was 15, she used to drag McDowell Road, which is, if you're from South Jackson, you get how cool it is to drag McDowell Road, especially with your big sister. When she lets you get in that green Maverick and take off with her, it was just amazing. She was incredibly special. We would do our hair and makeup together before we kind of sneak out to McDowell Road because I was only 15. And we always used to say, you know, the bigger the hair, the closer to God. Well, let me tell you, between Aquanet and Jesus, we were good. We're good today too, so there you go. But we were more than just sisters. When our mom passed away, she had us in church 3 days a week, regardless. So it was a wonderful family to grow up with. But when she passed away, we were at the funeral, we looked at each other, we're like, oh dear, who's gonna pray for us now? We just lost mom, we're in trouble. And that's when we said, you know what, we're not in trouble, we got each other. So for as close as we were prior to mom passing, we really became close after that. We would talk every day. Almost a day did not go by that we were not on the phone, talking about Steve, talking about her working here, talking about the preschool. It's like when I came to visit, I knew all you guys because she talked about you so much, which was so precious and amazing to me. She walked me through some pretty hard times in my life, and I did the same for her. And about a month ago, I was sitting by her bedside, and she said, sis, will you be with me when I die? I'm like, oh, that's no pressure. I don't know, honey, I got work, I got my family. I've been down here 13 times over the past year. Southwest, the flight attendants know me. It's been just such an honor and a blessing. And I said, I don't know, sweetheart, I'll try. But Jesus knows who we're close to now because of the Aquanet. He allowed me that privilege to be holding her hand when she passed. So we did it. So that's a little bit about my sis when growing up. And then she met this guy named Steve. And my whole problem was one day I called her and the phone rang and she didn't answer. And I'm like, what is going on with this? She called me a little bit later. There's something I meant to tell you. And I said, what's that? She said, I just got married. I said, you did what? She said, I just got married. I'm like, you didn't even call me and tell me. She said, I know, but I was getting there. And then one time, she was going to a conference with Steve, and she called me and she said, hey sis, and I said, yeah. She said, I don't know what to do with my hair. I said, I'll tell you what to do with your hair. She said, what's that? I said, you're at a fancy hotel, right? And she said, yep. I said, I want you to go downstairs and I want you to get your hair done, let them do your makeup, and you go pick out a new dress. And she said, I really can't afford that. I said, just charge it to Steve, it'll be fine. And she did. The guy did her hair, his friend did her makeup. Steve walked right past her and didn't even recognize her. She was looking awesome. So since she married Steve, she got to retire early from Bell South. So that was quite amazing because then she traveled all over the United States with his clan that he worked with. She became known as the Den Mother. So one day she calls me, I said, what are you doing, sis? Laundry for like 3 guys. I'm like, are you serious? And she said, it's the greatest joy of my life, which was amazing. I used to love coming here, hanging out by the pool with her. I was here on Labor Day. She wasn't feeling the best, but she said, let's go down and float. And I said, okay. So we're floating in the pool. I'm kind of hanging on to her to make sure she's okay. We were holding hands. We both fell sound asleep for about 20 minutes. And when we woke up, she said, that's the best sleep I've had in a long time. I said, I know. That was amazing. But again, talking about her church family, you guys just drew her in, and she appreciated and loved every one of you. She would tell me about the children's choir. She would tell me about putting paper in the machine for you. You know, it was so funny. I just loved it so much. So thank you for Steve. Steve wanted to be able to tell you guys, thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here and for Steve and the family for the past year. It has meant so much to everyone. I loved it as well. I love the prayers. I love the support. I love the chicken casserole. I love the sweet potato casserole. I love the pecan pie. I love the chocolate cake. And you guys too. But also the cookies that have come and things, and the ham. I don't think there's a pig left around here. The ham has been amazing. So If you need a ham sandwich, drop by the house, because it's amazing, it's awesome. For her friends, Larkin and Missy and Brenda. You guys are the best. Thank you. So her Facebook page is gonna be very lonely. She used to blow that thing up every day on Facebook, all the time. But she did it because when she first got sick, she wanted people to know that she was sick. Because she wanted your prayers. She wanted people to know that she needed other people to help support her. She posted so much, sometimes I go, Steve, please take that phone away from her. Some of these words aren't even making sense now, just take the phone away. But she loved it. She took so many pictures because she didn't want to forget. She came to visit me in Sycamore in April when Steve had to go to Mexico on business, which was the greatest blessing ever. She did not miss one place that she used to go to in Sycamore, when she would come to visit me. She walked into the bakery one morning, just threw open that door and said, "Good morning, Sycamore." And I'm like, inside voice, shh. So she just loved it. And I loved having her as, right there with me. Last time she was in the hospital in August, she didn't sleep much. I was trying to sleep in a recliner for like 3 to 4 days. I remember I woke up at one point and her face was like right next to mine. She was leaning over and she said, "Sis," and I said, "What?" She said, "You look terrible." Seriously? No, I'm sorry. You look tired. And I thought, I'll take that. And she went, "Yeah, no, you look terrible." And I'm like, thanks. But for as hard as this past year has been, what an amazing blessing to be able to spend so much time with her, to get to know Steve's family, and just to have that time with her. And what an opportunity today to celebrate her for everything that she's meant to everyone. I have been shopping with Larkin, little retail therapy, since I got here. It's worked out very well. But we have walked into stores and then Larkin and I'll be just chit-chatting and somebody will go, "Are you Cheryl's sister?" And I would go, "It's Gogi," but yeah, then I'm Cheryl's sister. And all I've heard time and time is what a beautiful light she was, how she made everyone feel loved, and how she just appreciated everything and every little day. She always found something to celebrate every day. So that's what we should be doing, is celebrating her today. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I left out. Other than, Tim, thanks for driving 15 hours to get here overnight. Couldn't do it without you. So that's my celebration of my sister. And I just want to open it up to anyone else that's got any other little thing that they would love to share to celebrate her today. Oh, she's passing the mic. I thought you were just come on. Jeff, did you have something you wanted to say? I'll pick on people. So,
You want to go? I wrote a little something on my phone, so forgive me for using my phone. So I'm Jeff. I'm one of Dad's 3 sons, and I feel somewhat unworthy to be up here talking in this situation. I haven't had the opportunity to get to know Cheryl near as well as I probably could have. There's a lot of distance there between Northwest Indiana and North Carolina. But the times that I did were amazing. And so I just want to talk a little bit about the impact that her and Dad had on our lives. So the Bible says that when 2 people gather in union under God, that they become one flesh. And often our society struggles with this concept as we strive to be independent, and we set personal boundaries, and we kind of just reject that idea. Like, what does it really mean to become one flesh? However, Dad and Cheryl showed us what it really means. It means loving another person so much that your sole purpose in life becomes making one another smile, feel safe, and feel loved. Not because you don't care about yourself anymore, but because you love the other person so much, you find more joy in brightening their day than you would trying to make yourself happy. Living within another person so deeply that when one hurts, you both hurt. That when one feels joy, you both celebrate. And all aspects of life become shared together, because together, everything is better. Dad and Cheryl, you gave your family and your friends hope that that kind of love still exists. Cheryl, I want to thank you for making my dad whole. Not only did you bring him this kind of love, but you created an environment that it was easy for him to reciprocate that love. But you also brought him the biggest gift we can give one another. See, my dad grew up Catholic, and our family grew up Catholic. Since then, I was actually baptized Christian in college, and I remember when my dad came down and I was getting baptized, and he wanted to make sure, like, you know what you're getting into here? Yeah, because I had already been baptized. I was a baby, and I had been baptized Catholic, but at that point I had made the decision to give my life to Christ. Well, you could imagine the excitement that I had when my dad told me he had done the same. And that gift that Cheryl gave him was a deeper faith and relationship with Jesus. And that's amazing. It's the best gift we can get. Cancer sucks. It absolutely sucks. And many of you don't know me personally, but I'm a survivor of cancer. I had cancer when I was 19 years old. And I don't know how to explain it, but chemo is literally like poison going into your body, trying to kill everything, hoping that the good stuff still lives. But Cheryl, in your battle, you inspired us all to think through that, to think deeply about what it means to live and love. You're one of the strongest people I know. So, in that, let us take the time to remember how you always loved by putting others first, living selflessly. God called us to let others know we are his people by being different from the world. To show love and forgiveness as he demonstrated it to us. Cheryl, you did this, not just on occasion, but as a way of living life every single day. As we gather right now, Dad is no longer whole. That one flesh in Cheryl's passing no longer exists in this world. When talking with Dad, the emptiness, the hole in his heart, the void is clear. But Dad, as the Footprints in the Sand poem explains, this is one of those times you'll look back and you'll see one set of footprints. Nobody expects you to walk right now. Allow Jesus to carry you through this. And you may actually look back and still see two sets of footprints, not because you were walking, but none of us would be surprised to find out that Cheryl was walking right there beside Jesus as he was carrying you. I'm going to take a little bit of liberty and try and say some words on Cheryl's behalf here, so forgive me, Cheryl. Yeah. But I think if she were right here, right now, Dad, think she would say, "I love you, baby. I'm okay. And I can't wait to hold you once again when you join me in paradise."
Would anybody else like to share a word of remembrance? Jamie has her microphone. Jamie?
I don't need it. You know how big my voice is. Yeah, I'm good. I know. She was just a light, and everybody that's ever met her in their life. And even when she didn't have cancer, I would come out this door out here, and old Miss Rebecca and Mr. Waterhope sitting there, I would look for her. I would have nobody to hug no more. And I would just run to her, and I would hug her. And back when she had cancer, and her head was bald as mine, I would tell her, just like I would tell Miss Mary, that only the cool people have bald heads. And I just miss you, and I can't wait to hug you on that head.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Thank you all for sharing. Phyllis?
John asked me if I wanted to say anything, and I said no. But it didn't matter because all you did, and now I'm still a mess. So, Cheryl was a wonderful person and so strong. And I just hope I can honor her in seeing this. Didn't know today would be our last, and I'd have to say goodbye to you so fast. I'm so numb I can't feel anymore, but I'm praying you just walk back through that door and tell me that I was only dreaming.
let me invite you to hear with me these familiar words from John chapter 14. These are Jesus' words to his disciples. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions, many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I'm going. But Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. In these verses that we read this morning from John chapter 14, it's part of a larger section of Scripture which makes up John chapters 14 through 17. We find these words following Jesus' farewell meal where he pauses to wash his disciples' feet. In a real way, you could say that this is Jesus finally teaching his disciples one last lesson. It's a senior seminar of sorts as he's trying to cram into them, and they are trying to cram understanding what Jesus has to say. This larger section of Scripture is referred to as Jesus' farewell discourse. He's preparing his disciples as he tells them farewell for now. The lesson that Jesus is trying to tell his disciples, he seems to describe it in the text that we've read. I am the way, Jesus says, and the truth and the life. But the disciples are confused by this statement. They wonder, where are you going? As they ask him aloud. And how do we get there? It seems that Jesus in these verses and the verses to follow is not so much focusing on a destination as much as a relationship. As a matter of fact, in Jesus at the very beginning of the text we've read, says, in my Father's house there are many dwelling places. Dwelling places. Dwelling place is a place to live. A mansion is a beautiful home. A room that we have in God's kingdom. Interestingly enough, the word dwelling places, the Greek word for it, is used only one other time in the New Testament. In John chapter 14 and in verse 23, where Jesus tells his disciples, those who love me will keep my word, and my Father will love them, and will come to them, and we will make our home with them. Dwelling places. Home. The Greek word is monē, which means an abiding, or an abode, or an indwelling. It is the place and also the act of abiding, which really makes sense for us as we read John chapter 14. For thinking of Jesus' presence and Jesus' peace and Jesus abiding and being with Jesus is like being at home. As a matter of fact, if we understand anything about Jesus' enactment of the hospitality ritual of foot washing, it really was simply Jesus welcoming his disciples into God's house. I guess you could say in these words from Jesus, we find that we are at home with God. That in Jesus Christ, we are abiding with and abiding in God. I guess you could say this is Jesus' way of saying to his disciples, welcome home. As I thought back on the first time I met Steve and Cheryl, it was in this sanctuary, sitting not very far from where Steve is sitting today. He and Cheryl had come to visit the church, and in a congregation our size, it's not very difficult to see who the visitors are. So before worship that day, I made a beeline to welcome them and introduce myself very quickly. I try not to ask too many questions at one time. You don't want to be overwhelming to visitors, you know. They greeted me and were very kind and left the service that day. And come to find out, in talking with Steve, that very first visit they made of the church, we were having a business meeting or some type of business that day, so it wasn't work or worship as usual. And so after they left that day, Steve asked Cheryl, what did you think about the church? And she said, not so much, probably won't go back. But fortunately, Steve talked her into giving us one more chance. And the next time they came, it was a regular worship day. And that day, Johnny Sue Lee and Celeste Bird happened to see them in the congregation visiting. And they both made a beeline to Steve and Cheryl. And if you know anything about Johnny Sue and Celeste, you know that they are one-woman welcoming committees. And they made them feel right at home. It wasn't long before Steve and Cheryl jumped in literally with both feet, and the baptism that Steve's son mentioned a while ago was a part of that. They not only joined the church, but became very active in the church, serving in many capacities and participating in many ways. Steve even being our Baptist men's director for a period of time. But it wasn't long, of course, until Cheryl became the secretary for the church. She had found out we were going to be looking for someone, and she wanted to put her name in the pot and see if she could serve in that capacity. I remember at the interview, Cheryl seemed so nervous. I had gotten to know her fairly well at that time, and she was easygoing and laid back, and it didn't seem like anything bothered her. But at the interview, she seemed so nervous about the prospect of maybe even being the church secretary. She was very, very polite. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am to all of the committee members. There was a sense that Cheryl showed her respect for that job and the intentionality toward the job, that it be done right. Of course, Cheryl got that job and came on and began to work in the church office. And I always told Cheryl there were only just a few rules of the job. The number one rule, of course, for any church secretary is to make the pastor look good. That's the number one rule. And even though I was only halfway kidding with that, Cheryl took that responsibility to heart. I can't tell you how many times she would come in and she was always wanting to make sure that she was doing things correctly, that she was doing it the right way, that she was doing it the way that I wanted her to do it. And I always had to assure her, Cheryl, you're doing fine. You're doing great. Just keep on going. We all make mistakes occasionally. We work through them and we just keep going. The other thing about that was she was always very protective of me, especially in the old office space. Of course, you walked into the old office and Cheryl's desk was the first one you came to. The pastor's study was a little farther back down the hall. Cheryl was always constantly making sure that she wasn't bothering me or interfering when people came in. She was very protective of the pastoral study, wanting to make sure that she did everything she could to make sure my needs were met. The other thing that I told Cheryl about being the secretary of the church is the secretarial position requires utmost confidentiality. Individuals come in, they share their feelings, they share their questions, they share their concerns, and oftentimes the church secretary is the very first person who catches all of that. And anything that is said, anything that is overheard, any discussions that are had, have to be done in confidential ways. Cheryl took that very, very seriously. And I told Cheryl finally, the real thing about being a church secretary is you often are the very first person someone walks into the church will meet. Not just church members coming in or community members, but sometimes just people off the street or people just calling on the telephone. The church secretary is the first impression that people get of the church. The church secretary not only represents the congregation, the members of First Baptist Church for us, but in a very real way, the church secretary represents Jesus Christ. Cheryl took that job very, very seriously. As the Army used to say, it's not just a job, it's an adventure. And being a church secretary is often an adventure. Sometimes there are those good adventures, like going over and celebrating with the preschool kids when they're having birthday parties or Thanksgiving celebrations or Christmas parties. I did not know this until this week, but apparently Cheryl would tell all of the preschool teachers on those party days, please save me some Cheetos so I can have them. But then there's also those adventures that sometimes just come and you don't know how to plan for them. Cheryl, of course, was our church secretary at the beginning and in the midst of COVID. It was a struggle for all of us. We were all thrown off of our feet. The jobs that you normally do as a pastor or a minister in the church or as a congregation or as a church secretary, all of that went out the window. We were all grappling, struggling, trying to figure out literally how to fly the plane as we built it. And Cheryl stepped up to that task. I don't know of a day that she missed at the height of COVID where she did not come in and take up her task and her duties at the secretarial desk and still be an individual who welcomed individuals. And I guess that's the biggest thing about Cheryl, is that in the position of being the church secretary, there was always a spirit of hospitality that she gave. She welcomed individuals with open arms, and she literally made them feel at home. At times, being a church secretary is not always easy. We have limited funds, if you will, in our benevolence fund. And oftentimes when people come or call, we have to say, I'm sorry, we cannot help today. But how many times Cheryl would tell individuals that, I'm sorry, the church just does not have any money today to help out, but then rifle through her purse and find a bit of money to give those individuals. I also just found out this week that many of you all have benefited from Cheryl sending bud vases and calls and texts, just checking on the membership of this church and this community. She truly served in the capacity of church secretary in a wonderful way. I'll never forget, last year, Cheryl had been diagnosed with cancer not too many days or weeks. It had already taken a toll on her body. This is before she began her treatments. And she and Steve came into the office one day. He helping her all along the way. She sat down in my study. She talked a little bit about what had been found so far. And she began to cry. And she said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do the job anymore. And I assured her we would get the work done, the bulletins made, the newsletter printed, the phone calls answered. And then she said, but I'm worried about you. I assured her I would be okay. That the concern at that time needed to be for her and for Steve. That we would hold off on the resignation until we found out how this played out. We cried, we prayed, and she and Steve left. That's the kind of dedication Cheryl had to that job. But I think it also shows us a template for the person that Cheryl Chicki was and is. A vibrant woman, a precious soul. Cheryl seemed to like everyone that she met. Steve said that oftentimes Cheryl would be in a drive-through line at a fast food restaurant, especially at Chick-fil-A, and she would pay for the person behind her. There's no doubt, as you have heard and as you know, that she deeply and truly loved Steve, and that she truly knew how to love everyone. Cheryl talked about her love of Jesus and wanting to be more and more like him. And one of the loves of Cheryl's life was her house. Steve said that she picked it out and she decorated it. And I got to thinking about that. Cheryl's house, it seems she wanted to be not just the destination, but she wanted the relationships that that destination afforded. She wanted those relationships to be built and nurtured and to be grown and to thrive. You see, her house to her wasn't just a place that you lived. It was a place you abided and grew close and built relationships and made a home. Before Cheryl passed away, from this side of life to the next, Steve told her that when she gets to the other side, to get that house ready. And it seems Cheryl knew that that time was getting closer. Belinda was telling me that she ran across a note, really more than a note. It was Cheryl's wishes that she wrote on November the 14th, 2021. Just a few days ago, Cheryl told Larkin that she wanted to go to her house on the 14th so she could get better. Well, Cheryl passed away Sunday night. On our calendar, it was November the 13th. And then I remembered our Jewish friends' calendar is a little different. Where the new day begins at sunset. So could it be that Cheryl entered the glorious beauty of God's kingdom in more of a full way on the 14th of November? Was that something she knew? Was that something in God's silence? Perhaps we won't know on this side of life. But Steve recalled a poem he had heard that talks about dying. Written by Henry Van Dyke, it's entitled, Gone From My Sight. I'm standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the moving breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She's an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until at length she hangs like a speck of white cloud, just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, she is gone." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast, hull, and spar as she was when she left my side. And she is just as able to bear her load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone says, "There, she is gone," there are other eyes watching her coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout. Here she comes. As we're reminded from John's Gospel, the 14th chapter, Jesus gave his life so that we might not go to a home, but that we would be at home in him and in the Father. And on that evening that Cheryl passed from this life to the next, Jesus said to her, "Welcome home." please bow with me as we pray? Gracious God, as we've carved out this time this morning to celebrate Cheryl Chicki's life, we thank you for all those things that have been said and sung, for the words that have been prayed, for the notes that have been played, as we remember her and recall how wonderful in our lives she has been. Lord, we cry a sense and have a sense of mourning this morning because Cheryl loved so openly and deeply, and we've benefited from that love. But we also know, O Lord, that indeed your Son has welcomed her fully into his kingdom. And because of that, we give you thanks. That even though death in this life is reality, it does not overcome nor overwhelm us. Words like cancer cannot defeat us because you have overcome death in the grave. This day, O Lord, may you continue to pour out your Spirit upon Steve and the family, strengthen them and give them courage for the days that are ahead. Join us together with them as we remember and recall and celebrate Cheryl's life, and as we look to the future in hope, as she would have us to, with words of encouragement for one another, realizing our hope truly and finally is in Christ Jesus. For it's in his name we pray. Amen. Cheryl, we, your family and friends, have journeyed with you on this side of life as far as we possibly can, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. But we place you in the hands of the same loving God who brought you into this world, knowing that God will do right by you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go with God, Cheryl. Go with God. At this time, as the family remains seated, let me ask everyone else to please stand. The family will be in the fellowship hall. For those of you that would like to speak to them, you'll find that immediately behind our sanctuary all the way to the back towards Church Street. Again, we give God praise and thanks for the life of Cheryl Chicki this day. We celebrate who she was and who she is, even in the midst of Christ welcoming her home.